Hello, everyone, and welcome to 2021. My name is Phoenix Normand, and I wanted to talk about what the EA landscape looks like for this new year. One of the things that I've always sort of studied is just trends in both the market as well as the role, the expectations, and really try to figure out really what's coming down the pipe. I mean, I think 2020 served us learnings like we would never have believed. I'm still kind of processing a lot of it, to be honest with you. But the one thing that I really sort of paid attention to, especially since I had all this time not traveling the world and teaching live, is really kind of diving into some of the issues that both executives and executive assistants were having during this transition from, working in an office to essentially working from your kitchen table for, the balance of the year, as well as doing that almost overnight. And what I found was there was a massive chasm between, I'd say a chasm between two separate expectations, meaning executive assistants had a set of expectations, executives had a set of expectations, but for some reason there was a lot of, or I should say not a lot of cross-pollination. A lot of assumptions were made by executives of their executive assistants. A lot of executive assistants had assumptions based on what they were hoping would happen with their executives. And that sort of tension ended up with a lot of people being disappointed, let's be honest. So, with that, I think we've found a new way, or at least a new opportunity to really kind of bridge that gap between what the expectation is on both sides of the coin and making sure that there's synergy and that synergy allows both to move forward. So I want to talk about, sort of a few predictions that I'm having for 2021 with regard specifically to the executive EA relationship and how companies are, looking at the executive assistant role. Because again, I believe, and I've been kind of preaching this for a couple of years now, going virtual is the way. Meaning, yes, yay for us, we have vaccines rolling out and all of that, but I honestly believe that, staying virtual is probably a really, really smart business move for a lot of businesses, or having people come in only a day or two a week to sort of sync up, synergize, and then go back to their respective homes and work from there. Because I believe business finally figured out that you get better work, you get a better quality of work in most cases by people being in environments where they feel empowered, where they don't feel pressures or just random stuff happening that usually distracts from actually getting business done. So why F with that? I don't know how else to put it. Instead of trying to force people back into an office setting that they may or may not feel comfortable in, why not just work with what you got? And what we got is something that is much, much cheaper from an operational perspective for most businesses, a lot more empowering for employees who are able to just sort of roll out of bed, throw on a shirt or something and call it a day and continue to work. But then also just being in environments where, again, they feel not only empowered, but they have a certain, they can sort of construct the environment according to their needs, as opposed to being in an office where you're kind of at the whims of the culture, your desk setup at work, those open plan environments that just never really, were conducive to doing good quality focused work. So again, I think a lot of the learnings that we're getting from this pandemic, we're now able to apply to what 2021 is going to look like. So let's dive into it. So I've got 6 sort of basic predictions for 2021, especially where executives and executive assistants are concerned. The first one is more attrition. I believe that there will be more attrition. I also believe that we're headed toward a pretty gnarly market crash mid-year of 2021. And I think what we're going to see is the lead up to that. People have been out of out of work for a while. Those that don't have jobs, obviously, businesses have been closing in record numbers, with many of them not able to return. This stimulus check nightmare has really sort of put, in a weird way, a nail in the coffin for a lot of people's, personal finances, businesses, etc. And a lot of the businesses that, really relied on, for instance, people being face to face and being in, close proximity to one another, those businesses won't be returning anytime soon until the vaccine, until basically most of America, and this is what I'm talking about specifically, is vaccinated. So, there's going to be a lot more attrition, as much as we, seem to think that we've all sort of kind of leveled off and, have such hope that this vaccine will allow for a lot less attrition. From a financial perspective, we've got a long way to go, my people. And, I was laughing. Someone said that, if you really looked, I live in Los Angeles, in downtown Los Angeles. So in Los Angeles County, if you were sort of able to stack rank where I am in the COVID vaccine line, there are approximately 3,200,000 people ahead of me, even as a 51-year-old gay man. So, that is something to sort of keep in mind, that, there's still 3 million people that are going to be vaccinated ahead of me. Which means my vaccination probably won't even happen until, I honestly believe, Q3 of this year, unless by some miracle we're able to get these rolled out and really a lot of these vaccination events take place on a much more rapid and much more broad spectrum. I just don't, I honestly don't see much of this changing until Q3 of this year. So, with that said, markets are going to, I think, suffer. Personal finance is definitely going to suffer, and definitely business finance is going to suffer as well. And a lot of businesses started in 2020, but really are going to look at their bottom line in 2021 and start to make some hard cuts. And a lot of those cuts are going to be, unfortunately, roles like executive assistants. Do you truly need 8 executive assistants making $100,000 plus per year? Or do you need like maybe 2 or 3 really, really super competent, ready for, a management boost or something like that, who can sort of look after a bunch of virtuals, for instance, as opposed to having full-on headcount that a lot of companies and executives are having a hard time really justifying those salaries right now. Is that the move? Or is it better to, like I said, maybe keep 2 or 3 amazing executive assistants, put them on a management track to sort of oversee the administrative and operational needs of the company and needs of specific executives, and sadly let others go. So I think that's something to really keep in mind is the type of attrition that needs to happen. To be honest with you, that's only one role. Let's talk about all the other sort of redundant roles within organizations. So again, I think attrition is going to be a really big concern, and especially for those in the EA ranks. If you're not at the top of the game, and if you're not really, performing at a super duper high level, you might want to, keep an eye on what you can do to improve, what you can do to better partner with your executives, find ways to insert yourself into more, needle moving projects. I love to say, been saying that for the last 2 years. Now I think you get it. It's really important that you have your name somehow co-signed on something that is absolutely vital to the survival of the company, let alone the thrival, if you will, of the company. So keep that in mind. Number 2, decreasing wages for current EAs. It's no secret that a lot of companies are starting to look at, your geographic location, especially since we're remote, especially since we're going to be remote for, I'd say, probably the bulk of this year. Do you, if you're living in like a little, podunk town in the Midwest or something like that, and someone else who's doing just as good a job as you is living in expensive ass San Francisco, California still, then, it might behoove the company to pay, the person in the podunk town a little bit less, just because clearly they're, or at least the assumption is that they're, their cost of living is much, much less than the one living in San Francisco, California. So it's kind of shitty. I'll be honest with you. I think you should be paid according to, the value you provide to the company as opposed to your geographic location. That seems so ridiculous to me. But as a businessman now and a CEO of a couple of companies, yeah, I mean, I would probably do the same thing. It's no different than, the team that I have established in the Philippines, for instance. Their wages are much, much less than if I were to have the exact same team here in the States. It would cost me a freaking fortune. So, it does make good fiscal sense to pay people according to where they geographically are. However, having been an executive assistant for so many years, I'm a little Jekyll and Hyde on that, meaning, I still believe that executive assistants provide quite the service, and no matter where they are in the world, they should be paid accordingly. So do with that what you will, but just know that the wages for a lot of existing executive assistants will be decreasing. And that's more not a slight to you in the role. It's more of a financial move on behalf of businesses to, save money, maybe even keep from having more attrition. I mean, would you rather have the option of, hey, we're going to have to cut your job, or, hey, you're going to have to take a salary reduction in order to keep your job? A lot of people right now, until we get this COVID thing under control, would, I think, I'm about happily, but quite willingly take the decrease in salary, especially if they've moved outside of a super expensive area, and know for a fact that the adjustment is one that still allows them, a similar quality of life. So keep that in mind. Number 3, companies to tap vetted virtual assistants. So, one of the things that I have always kind of known, but really discovered these days, is the fact that virtual assistants is just a good business move. I don't know how to say that. For companies, especially smaller companies or companies that have, been kind of decimated, so to speak, but are still thriving, but still need that sort of vetted, high-level executive assistants. VAs are a great move. They're a great financial move. There are amazing executive assistants who, left large companies, left, newsworthy and noteworthy CEOs to start virtual assistant businesses of their own. There are some fantastic virtual assistants companies out there based in the US who have teams obviously in the Philippines, but also are able to provide service and coverage, if you will, almost 24/7, 365. So if you think about it, if you're paying a head count in the United States, $100, $150, $170,000 a year, you're really still only getting 9 to 9, but like 9 to 6 amount of work. Whereas, sometimes incorporating a virtual into that mix, or, maybe making that decision that you don't necessarily need a $170,000 executive assistant anymore, and you can hire a virtual company or a virtual team or that assistant as a contractor who handles all of your virtual, or handles, a bunch of virtuals spread across the world. It's a great job opportunity, kids. To really sort of diversify in such a way where they have 24/7, 365 coverage, as opposed to just one executive assistant working a certain number of time, a certain number of hours. One of the number one problems that a lot of executives have, and a lot of executive assistants, and that relationship, a lot of the tension comes from, executives really just sort of ideating. I do this now, and I used to bitch about it when I was an executive assistant, but now I do it as a CEO, where I just ideate and I write stuff down and I send it off, and I don't think, because I just need to get it out of my head and onto paper so that I don't forget, and also just to get another set of eyes on it. And whereas executive assistants, those that don't quite understand the real business aspect of what that's all about, take it personally, like, how dare you send me something at 8 p.m. expecting an answer. There's no expectation of an answer necessarily. It's really just getting it out there. So, I think therein is an opportunity to sort of have that range of coverage that allows executives, to be able to do exactly that, to be able to sort of like, brain dump at 10 p.m., go to bed and wake up and find, oh shit, it's already done. You know what I mean? That to me is the 2021 version of executive assistance, if you will. ASSISTANCE, if you will, as opposed to the sort of very traditional, one-to-one relationship with an executive assistant and their executive, and, all those hours that are just essentially wasted when work could actually be done. And the funny thing is, the same amount of money that's going out could actually cover that full 24/7, 365 assistance ability, as opposed to, again, just kind of, betting all the chips on one hand. So, I know that's not going to be a popular thing to say. I know a lot of executive assistants have already reached out to me like, okay, dude, are you turning on us? What the hell? But I'm trying to actually prepare executive assistants and executives and business to really sort of see the opportunity here. There's a tremendous opportunity to conduct business a lot more frugally. This is what business is all about. We do this every single time we have major challenges like this. We find ways to do things more efficiently. We find ways to do things that just make more fiscal sense. And we make those changes, so that we can both survive and thrive in business going forward. Number 4, more hybrid executive assistants, chief of staff opportunities. So as you know, a lot of the sort of, I won't say problems, but a lot of the issues around being an executive assistant is that good old glass ceiling that hits you right at executive assistant to the CEO. I had it. That's why I'm bald. I think almost all my hair got caught in the ceiling. But, that's one of the things that really sort of always sort of makes the role finite, if you will. And I believe that executive assistants have many, many, many more capabilities and the ability to sort of, punch above their boxing weight, if given the opportunity. And I believe we finally hit that, critical mass where this is a great opportunity for executive assistants to really go beyond just being an EA. In other words, take on more chief of staff-like responsibilities, because in a lot of cases, companies are going to have to lay off a bunch of executive assistants. They don't need tons of headcount. They really want to sort of, if they can, call the herd, so to speak, thin it down to really the sort of top of the top, meaning, 2 or 3 amazing executive assistants instead of 15, or 2 or 3 amazing executive assistants who oversee virtuals, both internally and externally, or maybe moving, and I suggested this with a company that I'm working with, moving your executive assistants to contractors, maybe still, giving them a stipend so that their health insurance and all that stuff is covered, but moving them from being like full-on executive assistant, like official headcount, into more of a contractor role, with benefits, if you will, that allows them their own sort of freedom and their own ability to sort of, govern the amount of time that they work and all of that, obviously within certain parameters. So, again, I think that also gives executive assistants, the ones that do remain, full-fledged employees, it gives them the opportunity to really kind of dig in, to take on more needle moving work, to, really involve themselves in the project, in project work, to really sort of become that, sort of unanimous resource that everyone sort of reaches out to in order to figure out what's going on, how to keep things on the train on the tracks, hold groups and individuals accountable to the deadlines that the company sets and objectives that were set, OKRs, all of that. And being able to do that in such a way where, it helps them improve as business professionals. It helps them also create for themselves their own sort of career track that, leverages the amazing work that they did as executive assistants, and then allows them to sort of take the next step and sort of be seen as, a true chief of staff. And I believe that hybrid is what businesses need right now. You don't necessarily, in my opinion, you don't need, just an executive assistant and just a chief of staff. I think the chief of staff role is one of those that it's very singular. And to me, it feels a little accessory. I won't lie. I mean, I think, it depending upon the size of your business and the type of business that you run, I think a chief of staff can be incredibly helpful to the executive, especially if the executive is bogged down in minutia all the time. A chief of staff can be the perfect person to sort of take on a lot of the minutia, keep train on the track, et cetera, et cetera. But why would that not be the executive assistant to the CEO? Makes no sense to me. I mean, that person sees everything. They see everything that comes in the door. They understand how, by that time, if you've been with them a while, they understand how business works. They understand their executive better than any chief of staff will understand them unless they've been there for 10 years. And don't forget, they have relationships up and down the chain that no chief of staff and no executive will ever have. Those water cooler conversations that they're privy to, those cocktail parties when we could go, that they attended and overheard some bullshit that was going on, or, ooh, wait a minute now, should I be telling somebody this? That kind of thing. All of that nuancy shit is the stuff that allows executive assistants an access, a level of access that absolutely no one else in the organization has. And that's why I always say that, that executive assistants truly are the one resource within the entire company that has access in every single aspect of the company. Whereas executives and chiefs of staff and people with these sort of big C-level titles have to rely on someone else, third party, in order to get the real about what's going on in their own organizations. So again, I think executives have a real opportunity here to kind of convert their thinking around how they utilize their executive assistants and how they empower their executive assistants, because they truly are their agents, and should be used accordingly. Massive missed opportunity that still hasn't remedied itself, but 2021 gives you all the opportunity to really make that change. Number 5, more compensation for advanced business acumen. So one of the reasons in Tribe that I'm really going hard on business acumen is, again, because of the previous 4 points. If attrition is going to continue to happen, if executive assistants still need a growth track professionally, all of these things that I think are easily remedied, I believe a lot of executive assistants, if they're going to take on, bigger, brighter, bolder roles, they should be compensated for more business acumen. I think the number one thing that I found as an instructor of executive assistants and advocate is that, the learning kind of stops, or it's so based on, skill sets and apps and just, I won't say stupid shit, but it's stuff that doesn't really help the business, if you want, in my opinion. I mean, yeah, it might help productivity a little bit, but that's not really the type of, sort of broad sweeping assistance, if you will, that's now needed in business. And think about it, especially now that we're all sort of relegated to our kitchen tables, there's a different type of expectation and a different type of need based on the business now. It's not about, booking rooms and making sure there's food for every meeting, greeting people at the front door, all this other bullshit that used to comprise, so to speak, the executive assistant role. All that got wiped when COVID happened. So now it's going to be really, really important to understand business, understand how it works, understand all of the terminology, understand all of the business metrics, understand how all those pieces fit within a very simple choreography, and being able to speak to that with authority, and to be able to do that on a daily basis. Executives have always wanted a business partner of their executive assistants. Sometimes they got it, sometimes to a certain degree, sometimes they didn't get it at all. And that's where we fall into that convenience category, where a lot of executives have high hopes. Those hopes get dashed a little bit, and then they just default automatically over to task giving and, seeing executive assistants as task doers, as opposed to the brilliant, highly connected, highly networked, resource that they actually are. But this is also executive assistants' faults, where we've allowed ourselves to be marginalized in such a way. We've stopped our learning, or we've defaulted to going to expensive ass, conferences. Sorry guys, I'm coming after you again. Expensive ass conferences that don't teach you business. They teach you, quick keys and things that, are okay in the moment, but again, don't lend to doing good business. And that's another reason why I'm really going hard on, I want to teach you business. I want people that join Tribe and that really sort of participate in the 2021 Learning Year on Tribe to really walk away with a sort of mini MBA, meaning you will know business by the end of 2021 if you're a Tribe member. And that's because that's been my saving grace as a CEO now, is learning business during the time that I was an executive assistant and watching my executives like a hawk, taking all the notes, eavesdropping on all the conversations. And also that allowed me to, again, help my executives in a way that they never expected. Me being able to make a phone call to a couple of VCs who I sort of raised when I was, when I was much, much younger, and when they were much, much younger as junior analysts who are now running hedge funds and VCs of their own. I can make a call and be like, hey, you remember me? I know you do. My boss needs a check, and let me tell you what he's doing. And it's like, oh my God, yeah, let's make the introduction. Go ahead. And how are you? That sort of thing. So again, I think as executive assistants create much, much more business acumen for themselves, or are able to sort of really understand business, really speak the language, really, be in the room quite confidently, I think their compensation should match those efforts. So that's something, I look at it more as an opportunity, especially if you're a top producing executive assistant right now. Double down this year on business acumen. Learn the metrics, learn the business, and really learn how to do it well. And the upside of that is, when and or if you decide to leave being an executive assistant or chief of staff or whatever else and decide to step into business of your own as a CEO, it's actually a quite easy transition. That's one of the craziest things that I learned about, me transitioning out of being an executive assistant into being a CEO multiple times, is it was easy. I already got the lesson that I needed. I learned business. I watched my bosses. I did all that stuff. And oddly enough, the transition was quite easy. I'm not saying, profitability and all that shit is easy. That's not. And I never sleep. But, I love the fact that, what was sort of scary to me when I first started out was just wasted energy, because I was able to transition, leveraging all of that information and business acumen and exposure and access in order to start my businesses. And it was quite easy, actually, which is a little scary. And let's wrap it up. Number 6, more management opportunities for top producing EAs. So I honestly believe that there's some great management opportunities here. In other words, if companies are going to downsize and they have, 15, 20 executive assistants, they need to cut, 17, not 17, let's say like 10, in order to hit some numbers that will keep the business thriving, or at least stop the bleeding. Then that also opens up opportunities for an executive assistant who has proven their worth, who has really done the damn thing, so to speak, and is able to sort of, because of the relationships they have with the other executive assistants, they can easily step into a management role where they oversee the remaining executive assistants. Maybe, if you're adding virtuals to the mix, oversee the virtuals as well, and really also take over bringing in new executive assistants or new virtuals that sort of fulfill the need, that have a certain level of business acumen, all based on what that particular executive assistant, now turning manager, has for themselves. So, again, this is a great opportunity for executives to sort of empower their executive assistants to really not only do the job, not only manage the team, but also really be able to recruit the very best, as opposed to, kind of going the route now, throwing up a job rec with HR, who has no freaking clue half the time with regard to the specifics of what is needed, and then just kind of hoping for the best. And then you end up with a boob and someone that just has no clue, or, oversold themselves during the interview, all of that. And then you're on this treadmill, And we've all been there. How many times have executive assistants or executives gone through multiple executive assistants because they just haven't nailed what the need is? And what better person to know the need than another executive assistant? Not a freaking HR person, not some rando, manager or whatever else. It's the person that has sort of seen what, the day-to-day is, what the day-to-day need is, understands the quirks of a particular executive, especially if they're hiring for that particular executive. And to me, you can only do that. I mean, it's one thing to get a synopsis and, you write that down, but you're going to miss the nuance. And that's another reason why I believe that executive assistants should be the one who hire additional executive assistants or have a massive role in what that looks like, as opposed to sort of being, relegated or delegated to, some rando walking in who has no clue and doesn't really know how things operate. And like I said, may or may not have oversold themselves in an interview and causing all this tension within the existing executive assistant ranks. So again, I believe this is an opportunity for executives to empower their executive assistants in a whole new way. Give them management opportunities, give them the ability to help you help yourself. In other words, the last thing an executive needs to be worrying about right now is an executive assistant or, a team of executive assistants. And, they need to really be focusing on the business and focusing on stopping the hemorrhaging and from a financial perspective, focusing on, what can we do? What can we leverage from 2020 to put towards 2021 that will, get us to a point where we can right our ship or continue to grow. If you're in tech, a lot of tech companies are continuing to grow and are actually expanding, but what does that expansion look like? Does that mean hiring a bunch of executive assistants that are expensive and potentially could be laid off again when, this market crash that I predict is going to happen hits? You see what I'm getting at? So I believe, again, this is an opportunity for us to really look at this and with different eyes and to sort of really focus on creating the 2021 version of what executive assistance, ANCE, looks like, and sort of crafting a new normal, if you will. I don't like the word normal, but we'll use it. Crafting a new normal in such a way where it allows business to continue to thrive. It also allows, some tightening, some attrition. Let's be honest. That's just natural. It's good business practice, and also some empowerment, the ability to continue to help your executive assistants grow in position and continue to. And also, add a management component to that, something that we can all use, especially on our resumes, as we continue to grow and look for roles beyond being an EA. So there you go. There's my sort of 6 predictions for the EA role, specifically for 2021. I believe, we'll have even more learnings this year. I don't think this is going to be an easy year by any stretch, but I do believe it's a year that has a completely different amount of hope than when we were sort of really embroiled, March, April, May in the insanity and people sort of, again, having to completely flip how they work, where they work from, find balance and, deal with kids that are out of school and cranky and all that. I mean, I think luckily, in a weird way, all that time that we had to try and figure all of that out, hopefully we've done that by now and found some sort of way of kind of keeping some semblance of normalcy throughout. But now we can leverage what we learned from 2020 and apply that to 2021 in such a way where it allows us to continue to grow and continue to accelerate growth, both within our businesses and our personal professional careers. So there you go, guys. I hope you enjoyed that. I hope it was at least a perspective that might cause you to think a little bit. Don't have to agree, kind of don't care, but it's something to definitely think about, and something that I believe is, again, an opportunity for us all to sort of just think differently and not react, but instead be more proactive about how, and thoughtful around how we empower this role. I don't think we need to, get rid of the executive assistant role. So please don't take that as me saying that. However, I do believe that there's a way of doing it smarter. And we've kind of been shown that opportunity. Whether or not we do anything with it, it's kind of up to us individually. So thank you all. If you have any questions, please feel free to hit me in the comments below. always happy to answer those. And then also those executive assistants who are, looking for a home, so to speak, consider joining Tribe. It's different. I've kind of taken the reins again and I'll be doing a lot of teaching and a lot, again, around business acumen. Sorry, there are plenty of places that you can go to get all the skills and everything. And again, I don't want to slag those people because they do provide quite the service. However, if you're looking for something that really, in my opinion, will benefit your career in a much, much different way than just learning a bunch of skills, then by all means, Tribe this year is the place to be. So if you want to join or if you have any questions, I have different tiers. We've got, monthly programs now. Feel free to look us up on www.thismytribe.com. And just take a peek. DM me if you have questions. I'm happy to answer those. And we'll go from there. So wishing you all an amazing 2021. 2020 was... but I have a funny feeling 2021 is going to be a fantastic learning year. Won't be easy, but it will definitely be, I think we will be wiser, if that makes any sense. So all that said, have a wonderful rest of your time off before that good Monday hits, and we'll talk to you soon.